Hello, everyone. How are you guys? So I went online and asked you again what you wanted to see next, and you actually chose this one. So this is one of the ones I'm going to paint. On this episode, we're going to learn how to do this because this is really cool, and I think you should learn how to do it. If you've missed some of the previous episodes, then certainly go and check them out. We did this one on a previous episode. This was really cool. Loved it. Did this one on the last episode. This was a great one. I've got more coming up as well. And this is all coming off of the group page. Actually, I think I'm just going to paint it right here since we have this nice little area here for these little cotton balls. I don't know. They're kind of like cotton balls, aren't they? Okay, let's get this side, and I think what I'm going to do is I'll turn my music off for just a sec while I walk you through this little tutorial. Okay, so how was your day, guys? So first, let's just talk about color for this project because I know you're probably you can use any colors you want, really, but like I like to use perylene green. This is from the Schmincke 48 wood box set that I have. I love this set. Comes with a palette and everything. I talk about it all the time because I love it. And the perylene green is a beautiful green, and I tend to use that a lot in my projects. And it goes really well with all kinds of blues. So whether you choose to have a washed out indigo or a Prussian, which I use a lot of Prussian because I like the way Prussian dries. Indigo sometimes, you can get like that kind of like if it's too thick, it's a little bit, I don't know, it just kind of looks inky, which it's indigo, so it will. But I love Prussian blue for that reason. Phthalo blues are amazing too, but they can push everything else out of the way. So, I tend to use Prussian, I think, more than anything else. I don't know why. I just do. Helio, I also like, but again, very, very strong color. So maybe let's look at the Prussian blue because I have that out already, and the perylene green. So I'm just going to, and we're going to look at brushes real quick. So lots and lots of options for brushes. You can use a flat brush if you want to, whatever it is that you're comfortable with. But what I would recommend is I love these Tintorito brushes. I recommend these highly. I love them. One of them is squirrel and one of them is synthetic squirrel. They work almost identically, but they're so amazing. And they're little travel brushes, which I think is just the cutest thing ever, right? They're made in Italy, and I have them listed on my materials list because I just use them so much and I love them. They're just great. The other brush that, as you may know or not know if you watch my channel often, is this one. And this is my single favorite brush in the whole wide world. I should just buy like the whole set of them because I love them. This is the Escoda Versatile size 10. It's a long round, and I also have it in a size 4, and I just use these all the time. This is like my go-to brush because I can do everything from this line to these, these pieces. I can do all of that stuff with it. I also love, another brush that I love is that green set. It's an Ultimo size 4. It's another kind of long brush, and it comes in one of those green sets, by Escoda. They have these cute little travel sets that I think are just so adorable, and they have different kinds of brushes in them. Like this is a set of the black brushes, and they have, just really huge wash brushes and all kinds of stuff in there. I love these. These travel brushes are just so adorable, and I keep them on hand. This is from the green set. So the green set is a really nice set, and it has lots of good stuff in it. So you could definitely do this project with this. I just think it's a little bit small for this project. I like to work with larger brushes. I actually like to work with the largest brush that I can for a project. I know that's going to sound strange, right? So Another square brush, a flat brush you guys had asked me about on the group page on Facebook was about my flat brushes. And I'm looking right now to see if I have the other sizes on my desk. And I don't know why, but I don't see them. Maybe I was using them somewhere else. I don't know. Okay, so I have one. Oh, here's the second one, but I'm missing the one in between. So this is the Neptune, and I talked about these brushes because I love this brush. This is a Neptune print by Princeton. It's the square wash brush. They come in 3/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and then there's a 1 inch too. And then I also, whenever I can get them, I get the other sizes as well. So whenever I'm putting in like an order, I'll always order the other sizes whenever I get a chance. This is actually sea glass, and if you use like, if you like to use twigs, you can actually draw lines with these little edges, and they are amazing for that. They're so good for that. They're also really handy to put on masking fluid. So this is I just think it's the coolest brush. I love it, and I love the way it holds water. I love the way it's just all set up. It's an incredible brush, and I think they would last a long time. Plus they're really pretty. So you can get them in sets. You can also get them one at a time. I highly recommend this brush, and I've had these ones for over 4 years now, and they are just still as perfect as the day that I originally started using them. So if I were going to recommend brushes for you guys right now, I am loving these. So I'm loving the Tintorito, and this is the like a quill kind of round, right? Like it will do everything. It will do washes and everything. I love the Escoda size 10 in the Versatile, the long, and I love the Neptune series, and in particular the flat brush from the Neptune series. Now, just recently, one of the lovely companies, A Gallo, who they're in Italy, they sent me these beautiful watercolors, and I'll be painting with these in the next project for sure. They also sent me a brush by Tintorito in a round, and I've been playing with it a lot. And you know what? They make a great, just standard round brush. Here it is. They sent me this. I did not buy this one. I was really surprised. They sent it to me as a gift, and I love it. A Tintorito is a great brush line, and they're not real expensive. You can get them on sale. Through my affiliate link also, you can save 10% on them. So pretty cool. You know what I mean? So if you do try them out and you go get any of these brushes, please let me know, because I love them. I've been so happy with them. And this is what I always recommend. So any of these will do. They'll all do great. Okay, so let's get started with this. So basically I'm going to use Prussian to kind of evolve this area here. I'm going to use Perylene Green, and I'm going to bring out a little bit of burnt sienna, because burnt sienna is a great way to temper out any like odd colors that you might have going on, right, in these projects. And I'll show you how to use it. It's very, very convenient color to have. You definitely want to wash it out though, because like when you use it full force, it's kind of odd. It has like a almost an opaque quality to it at some point, and then if you use it in smaller quantities and mix it really, really well, then that's when you start getting probably the better quality of that of the burnt sienna. Okay, so I've got my little mixing thing here. I'm gonna put on my little, let's see, if anything I'll probably maybe use this one, but I'm going to try and use as many as I can so I can show you how to use them. So my go-to is usually just this one. I love it, but let's try this one, this round Tintorito. This is the size 8. And I'm just going to throw some water on the burnt sienna, on the Perylene Green, and on the Prussian Blue. So we have our Prussian right there. Let me get down here so you can see this a little better. Okay, so we got a light wash of the Prussian here. I have a light wash of my Perylene Green here, and touch of my burnt sienna, very, very diluted here. When you combine these two together, you can see how it just gives you a neutral. It's a really, really nice little neutral. And that is a really big compliment to this palette. When you add a tiny little touch of burnt sienna to your blue, again, it gives you a neutral. It warms things up. So if you look really closely here, without the glow of the lights, you can see how nice this palette is together and how well this palette works together. So just 3 colors, that's all we really need. And I'm going to show you now how to manage them. So let me just give you another view. Okay, I think that should be pretty good. Okay, so first let's start with the interior of those flowers. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of the blue, put it in my palette. You see my palette's pretty dirty, but because I'm just using the same 3 colors over and over again, it's not really a big deal. I put a lot of the color in the center if you're just kind of using a dirty wash palette. And this is a ceramic palette. I'm adding a little water to it, loading up my brush with color. And one way to do this is literally just to do a very, very loose circle. Okay? The looser, the better, because you don't want it to be perfect. You don't want to get a circle. You want it to have like crazy edges. So if you look at this, you can see how it's got very, very strange edges. Okay, so now on this area here, I want to encourage there to be a very, very light shade in the background. So to do that, we're just going to dip our brush in water, and I'm just going to touch the upper edge, just like that. So now see what I've done? So the first thing I have, and I'm dipping my hand in paint here, is I have the first little ball, right? That first little really rough ball. And then the second thing I did was I have the a little bit of just clear water, and it's still bringing a lot of color, plenty of color. Now, of course, it's going to dry down, but you want it to be very transparent. And when you're working with transparency, it's kind of really important that you keep in mind that it will dry down, yes, but you can add layers to add more color in something like this, you know. But when you're wanting to do transparent flowers like this, you don't want to go too crazy. Now we're going to let them dry a bit, because once I add the perylene green, you're going to see what happens. So say I take the exact same really, really nice big fat bellied brush, and I dip it in my perylene green, and I kind of like wash it into the blue just a bit. And then say I just draw, I start just laying down some petals. Do you see how it bleeds? It's going to bleed a little bit because it's still damp, but it's not overly wet. And I actually really like the bleed. I think the bleed is really fun. And in other areas where I don't want it to run, I'm going to try to avoid it. But now, see how it bleeds ever so slightly? That's actually in the painting, and it looks really cool to me. I love it. But if you find that it's traveling too much in and you don't like it to travel that much, I'll show you one of the things that you can do is you can take a clean brush. So say I take my other one and wet it and then dry it on a piece of towel, and then I can just come back in and remove some of that very, very easily and create another little shape right like that. So now what I've done is I've stopped the bleed, essentially. Another way to do it is just dab it with your towel and then go back in and add a touch more blue. But I actually like the bleed, and that's what you're seeing. The looseness of that bleed is really, really cool. Like I'll just even go back in and I'll add a little more perylene, and drop that in as this is kind of evolving, because I want different tones, you know. And I'm taking the point of my brush and I'm just going to create some weird little shapes here. And then I'm going to come up here and I'm just going to kind of touch it ever so slightly with a little bit of heavier paint. And I'm going to come up here too and give it just a little organic shape. Now see how dark that is? If I wanted to lighten that up, I can take a clean brush and I can remove some paint or move it around. Or you can just take a towel or a sponge and you can actually press it once and you're going to have a little removal type of situation going there. Okay, should be able to see this pretty well now. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to do is add a little color to the side, and I'm just keeping it really, really easy like that. And again, if it doesn't have enough like different textures of colors, like different tones within that, you're just going to add a little bit to make it darker or take away a little bit to make it lighter. Okay, so that's another one. As far as the stem, you can take a very, very sharp point like this. That's what I love about this brush for this. I'm going to dip it in a mix of my blue and my perylene green, and I'm just going to go like that. And then from the bottom, I'm just going to go up there. And when I have this here, I'm washing my brush out a little bit, and I'm going to go and match it up, and one more time. There we go. Just that easy. Then I can take some of my brush water and I can add like little shadows here just to fill this out. I can also add a shadow glaze to the top of this just to give it a little more texture. And if you want a little more blue, you can add a little more blue. So I'm just going to put it in my palette here, and I'm just going to touch it just like that, just to add a little more blue. So you can see how there's a lot of different effects you can get when you're working with a slightly damp situation, you know? I like mixing also the blue and the perylene green together to get a little different combination, and then adding that into the bottom leaves, like, you know, like it's a little complementing shadow. Very cool, right? So let's do another one. These ones are starting to dry. I'm going to take some of that complementing blue, and I'm just going to very, very loosely create a little shadow. Now we're going to paint some of the side areas. Just kind of come around and just create, just play, you know. It's essentially it's whatever round shape you want it to be. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to create that little like stamen at the bottom, and then I'm going to add some more perylene and just kind of flick it very, very loosely up and just kind of let it go and do whatever it wants to do, because we don't want to entirely determine this. You know, we want it to stay loose and very organic. So I'm just kind of like pushing some of the color around. I'm going to wet my brush and see what happens when I draw this down. There we go. So as I drew it down with water, it's pulling some of the perylene down into it. And then now that the water's there, I can actually just kind of add color. And then if I want to come up to match it, I can do that just to keep it really loose and interesting looking, because I don't really love to have a stem just be really one straight line. It's kind of really not that interesting, you know. So I'm just doing some crazy stuff. I don't even know if this has little areas that come off of it, but I think it looks really pretty. So it's my party, so I'll do it if I want to. All right, taking some more perylene, mixing it in with the blue. And again, I'm trying to come up with different combinations here that don't all look the same. So in this one, we're going to wet this down, and I'm just going to kind of tap it over it because I want a very uneven edge, but I want it to be very light. There we go. And I'm going to grab a little more blue and add some more color, maybe to this side. Just smack it in there. Add a little more blue as we go down. And then we're going to just watch what happens and let it just bleed, you know, because we don't really have one like this. Then at the bottom, I'm going to take a little blue, like that blue-gray, and then add some perylene, come off of it for it's kind of like a weird little odd leaf shape. So see how I'm just kind of like letting the colors play together. Keeping the shapes just by letting this down and I'm utilizing what's here on my brush. You know, the brush shape. You can create a little fan-like area like that. You can come up here and connect the two. I like that. That's pretty. Now I'm going to rinse my brush out a little bit, grab a little more of the green, and I'm going to create a part of that base. Bring it down, wet my brush off, and bring it back up. And again, I'm just kind of going through with some light water here. Isn't that pretty? Okay, so here's what we have. Really, really beautiful. So you can see there we go. So you can see I have a lot of different things going on, right? I've created a lot of nice little patterns here. Among this, I've got some bleeding. If we want to do, like, encourage it to bleed just a little bit more while it's still drying, you can add some more blue. When this dries and you want to, like, if you want to shore up this line and you want it to look like the leaf is down here, you can actually darken it and just add it. As it goes, I like, you know, on nice watercolor paper, it's of course going to spread. So you kind of have to go back in and just kind of touch it in some areas to get, you know, to get some of the darker look. You know what I mean? So isn't that pretty? I think that's really beautiful. I love this. I'm going to come back in and just give a little more color to my stems, just a bit. I like it to be, you know, look like they're darker in some areas and lighter in other areas. This is pretty. Okay, so one of the other things that was involved in this whole thing was a little flick. So whether you use a long brush or these, let's show you what these look like when they do flick. So I'm going to do a little bit of a really, really light wash of the blue and green, same colors. And let's just give them a couple little splashes as it loosens up the painting. There we go. Now you know how I did it. So when it dries, now this is a beautiful, little bit different version. Everything always turns out different, right? Hang on. So that was the first one. And this is the second one. So let me show you another way to do this. Okay, so if you stay on my videos, I always at the end show you several ways to get to the same situation. So if we take a nice fluffy brush and we paint some clear circles. Okay, so we have dry paper and then some clear circles. What do you think is going to happen when I splash some color into it? It's going to explode, right? So what what else would happen if I just kind of go over it like this? It's going to start filling the circle, right, with some interesting washes of the color. And if I blend it together with a very, very wet paintbrush, you see how I just got like these neat washes, and then I've already got these little strikes already in there. So I've started building 2 more of these flowers by doing it that way, by first just painting in the circle, a very, very loose circle. You can see they're very imperfect because we don't want them to be perfect. And then I just kind of splashed the color on the paper. Some of it got in, and whatever didn't get in, I just kind of touched it here really easily. I don't want to put too much color in one area because I would really, really like to see, you know, some neat variations here. And this would be great to do with textures, you know, like you pick colors like by A Gallo, they have some beautiful granulating colors. So does Schmincke. They have gorgeous granulating colors. In fact, I've got my Schmincke right here. So let me see what I have. I have, see, some of these are granulating. So this is a beautiful granulating color. Let's get some on my brush. And I'm just going to add some in on the lower part of this. And, you know, the more water it has on it, if I got enough granulation in the brush, then it will really work out. Isn't that pretty? It's going to be beautiful. So then when that dries, it's going to granulate. Then without rinsing my brush off, I'm just going to grab some of the perylene green and keep some of the granulation on my brush. And I'll go ahead and do my stem. And the little like odd V shapes. Then I'm just going to encourage some of these leaf shapes. Take a little bit more and we'll just go in here. So you can see where it's not wet, it is darker. The application of the green is much darker. And then when I let it hit some of the areas that are wet, it automatically just starts to blend, you know, blend in. And then when that dries, you're going to want to go back and give it some more details, right? Just like I did over here. When it dries, once this is dries. But see how pretty and loose this is? I mean, it's just beautiful. And I'm just kind of, you know, I'm keeping it really simple and easy and just dropping in the color. If you get a little bit like, oh, I just don't want it to mix, then simply just rag it out. Drop in a little darker color in a couple of areas. You know, maybe grab some blue and drop in the blue. Just get daring with it because there's a lot that can happen here. You know, you can always draw it back. While it's wet, there's so much that you can do with it just by adding color and even just pulling it back. You know, I just love it. It's so pretty. And then if you find that it's not bleeding enough, you can really literally go in here with a little bit of water and you can encourage it to bleed. You know, you can tilt your paper depending on your watercolors and encourage it to travel. Isn't this pretty? So pretty. Grab a little more of my granulating color and I'll add that in. Yeah, it's so beautiful. So there you go. So we got 2 ways to do it. And I taught you guys another beautiful flower So don't forget, guys, I have a watercolor class for beginners over at jacquelinejacks.com. And the sketchbook class is wonderful because it's got all kinds of different tutorials like this in there. It's got a little bit of everything, and it's all inclusive. So you buy it once, and as I add new videos, you get those included as we go along for the ride together. And then once you graduate and you feel like you've learned enough and you're ready to specify, like, learn something specific, you can take my my landscape watercolor class or my floral watercolor class. Now, my floral one is already open, and it already has so many beautiful transparent flowers like this, all kinds of flowers for you to do, and even some that are not transparent that are really bright and really bold. So it depends on what you want to learn, but there's a lot in there. And in the watercolor sketchbook class for beginners, I developed, as a beginner class, just a beautiful sketchbook of different types of things that you might like to paint as you go through your days, on your watercolor journey. So there's like how to paint like these landscapes. There's like watercolor studies that you can do in that class with me. Back my camera off so you can see. There are interesting florals, and you'll learn backgrounds and some detailed type of things. Let me see what else is here. Things like this are really, really fun to learn, like how to use granulating color. It teaches you how to work with your colors and how to mix colors. I mean, there's just literally so many really cool projects in that watercolor class. These are granulating colors that I worked with, and I showed you how to build your own and make them your own, like you take a granulating color set and then you mix it and do it your own way, and then how you're using them, like with different washes. We talked a lot about paint and brushes and how to develop these beautiful flowers using granulation or non-granulating paints too, So there's a really nice mix of projects in the landscaping class, even some gold projects, which was really fun to do, and how to use your tools to develop all kinds of things, from trees to leaves to color palettes to cityscapes. So there's a lot of different things in the watercolor for the beginners sketchbook class, and I just keep adding new ones. So as I kind of see different things that you guys would really like to learn, then I go ahead and add a new video, and there's no extra charge. It's just all included in there. So one more thing I wanted you to learn and see if you hang out and you watch the video, even if I'm taking a break to let things dry, I always end with something else that you can learn. So let me get you in a little closer, and you'll notice that the way this dried, it kind of like spread, right? Because that's a really nice watercolor paper will do that. So on here, on this leaf, I'm actually going to take some dark, and I'm going to start blocking this in this way because I want this to have different effects. And this is a very, very wet way that we did it, as opposed to here where I did it in layers and I let each layer dry. It actually was easier to manipulate this, but this is the looser style. So I would say this style is easier for a beginner. This, as you can tell, it requires a little more thought, a little more, manipulating in the layers and thinking about the shape here and what you want to end up with. Because once you have it that wet and you start with it where it's just kind of bleeding around, not letting those layers dry in between, it definitely will keep working for you as you're going on. So then you have to let it lie. But now what I've got going on is I have that really light wash, I have some blue wash here, and then I have some perylene green. And so as this starts to dry down, which nowhere near the kind of dry that it should be, but as you can tell, I can go in and I can tap in some more blue layers. It is going to combine because you can see how wet it is. It really just wants to slide around. And you could even like lift your paper and let it slide and try and get some really weird little edges here. Would be really fun to get it like bleeding a little bit. You know what I mean? And then tip it back so that it doesn't just take over. But it definitely will close up and you'll lose a lot of the white. You might have to like just draw it back a little bit with a towel just by tapping it just a bit. So you be careful. But it is a little harder to do it this way. It's easier to do it this way. But as you can see, you get more of a blend and it just requires it to dry, and then you add another layer if you want to have a different effect there. You know what I mean? Like between the flower and the leaf, something separating it. You can also take the back of this and just literally put it into the paint, and you can scratch boundaries in to your painting. How cool is that? And that will keep things from spreading, because once you scratch it in with the back of this sea glass handle, it works almost like you're taking a colored pencil and you're scratching the paper. And since my paper is very 100% cotton and very soft, I can do that. I can actually sit here and just kind of like mold some shapes in for a different look and a different texture. And wherever I'm scratching, you know, it's over. That's the end of it. It's definitely going to be there, and it's not going to really travel anymore once you scratch it. But I do like seeing that kind of texture in sometimes. I think it's really interesting. You see what it looks like? So I'm just kind of adding some dark blue. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah, so that's another way to do it. But as you can see, it's a much different look as compared to the other look. You can see the difference. Sorry, I have this on an arm, so I just wanted you to be able to see it. And that was with the sea glass handle. So that sea glass handle comes in handy because it's not too sharp. It's, you know, it's just enough. I love them. I love these brushes. They're so fun. Having really like your favorite brushes around all the time is such a great thing, you know? I can also use the angle on this brush. So if I wanted to like pick up some color from my palette like this, and I wanted to like leave an impression on the page, I can actually press color in. And it gives a nice loose, you know, very random mark that I really like. And that's the flat edge. See this flat edge on this brush. It just allows me to, you know, just really easily just drop in some extra just little layers and little scrapes and scratches. And like right now I'm taking a very, very light mix of the blue and the green, and I'm just kind of adding a bit of shadow and shape to the edge of the petals, just so that they just don't look all the same. You know, I just want the texture there. I want these different things to look very, very loose, like nature. Like if you look at these kinds of flowers and things, they have a lot going on, you know. They have little tiny hairs that come off of them, and I feel like the more random you can make things happen on your nature pieces, you'll be so much more happy with it, you know. And it'll look just really pretty and loose and expressive. That's what I should teach. It should be expressive watercolor classes. Okay, so now we're just going to take it down the stem a little bit, up the stem. So look at how much nicer that looks just by kind of taking this. And I like it because it's like the perfect size, you know? It doesn't have too much. It adds a little bit of random texture. Isn't that great? I love that. So pretty. Okay, I'm really happy with these now. Okay, that's it. So come in and take my class, guys. If you have questions, go over to the group page, show me what you painted. And I'm really, really excited that you guys are with me this year as I paint and do all these neat little projects. I think it's really fun. I'm glad to have you here. Okay, happy painting. Leave your comments below. Let me know if you have any questions.